Hello, and thanks for coming to listen to our conversation that we're having today about COVID and vaccines and masks, but most importantly, about Team Human and trying to find some common ground here. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Danielle Weesey. I'm a pediatrician in Carmel, Indiana. And Sarah, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Sarah Redman. I'm a local spa owner. I'm an esthetician and a herbalist.
Okay. To get started, we're just each going to say a little bit about what we believe in, and then we're going to move on to kind of where our backgrounds are. But the point of this conversation is not to be a debate. There's not going to be any fact slinging or fighting. I think we should be trying to challenge each other, but it's not a conversation to try to convince each other to believe what the other person believes, because we both have very strong convictions and this is not the purpose of this conversation. So I guess I can start. I mean, obviously I'm a pediatrician and shockingly I'm a very big proponent of vaccines. My background with that is I just think that vaccines are the single best invention in modern medicine, and they've saved tons of lives, and I just have a high comfort level with vaccines because I give them all day and I talk to people about them all day. So I guess, again, it's just not shocking that that's where I'm coming from. Masking, I think, is really important right now while we have this Delta variant going around, just to keep kids in school and to keep our hospitals from getting overwhelmed, which both of those things are currently shaky. So yeah, I'm very much a believer in vaccines and in masking. And Sarah, I'll let you kind of say what you think.
Well, obviously I am opposite of what Danielle is because the point of this podcast, as far as vaccines, I am anti-vax, which I really hate even saying because I feel like already it coins terribleness, right? Which I guess is the point of why we're talking about this.
Yeah, do you think, not to cut you off, but do you think that, like, is anti-vax a offensive term to you? I've heard people say that. I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, it does kind of it's just like labeling anything else, right? Like, I feel like you're already smacking a label on me and you don't even know my story, totally. Right? Like, even though I'm saying, hey, I'm really not pro-vaccine for this time or for this thing.
Yeah.
I am a child of vaccine times. Like, I've had vaccines, things of that sort. So it does kind of like put a little bit of that negative connotation on it when people are like, oh yeah, I'm an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
I can see that.
Great. You're against everything that seemingly most people are for. Masking, I can sometimes swing either way with masking. I definitely am pro fresh air. I'm more pro supporting your body, letting your body kind of have its own reactions, building your immune system. I don't know, again, with researching as far as how much masks truly do help, but I do get that it makes some people just feel better. And sometimes, hey, if that's what gives you the strength to, I guess, get out of your house so you're not just holing up in there. But overall, I would say I'm definitely not on the bandwagon of the masking.
Okay. So we are truly on opposite ends, which is exactly what this conversation needs. So I just want to circle back to something that you just said that I thought was interesting. You said something that seemingly most people are on board with, which I think is interesting because we're in Indiana. We're only like 50% vaccinated. So, So I thought it was interesting that you said that you feel like most people agree with the vaccines.
Yeah.
Do you feel like isolated because of that belief at all?
I mean, I definitely feel like it seems that I would be in the minority.
Uh-huh.
It definitely seems that per media, right, they're pushing this whole, if you're not, pro the vaccine, if you're not pro masking, you're really not pro-human, you're against all of this stuff, and you're actually feeding what is making people sick. So I feel like with the media pushes, what everybody has been talking about with social media, stuff like that, I think if you are going against it, usually your posts are being taken down. People are getting, things kind of shoved to the side. So it seems like we're a little more isolated, but obviously that could be wrong.
Yeah, well, I wasn't saying that oh my goodness. I wasn't saying that statistic to make a point. I was just curious. Because it's interesting to know your perspective. And I was actually going to bring that up a little bit later, but we can talk about it now. I've had other people who are not fans of vaccines say that they feel isolated and they feel shamed. And I'm just curious, kind of, what are your feelings in general right now towards the pandemic and how you're being treated? And what's your overarching emotion right now in regards to all of this?
I would say overarching emotion is, anxiety coupled with, I guess, exhaustion, because it's all anybody talks about and thinks about and gets brought up. But in the more holistic world, I'm not afraid of the virus. Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid of anything like that. I trust my body. I trust my immune system. I eat well. I kind of lean on, plant-based diet, working with herbs, really kind of making sure that I have my immune system where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And then obviously helping others if that's what they need to do. So as far as the virus, I really am not concerned. But as far as dealing with people, that's where I get anxious.
Sure.
Because like we've seen, right? Mm-hmm. The bullying is taking place, the isolation, friends not becoming friends anymore, family members having, I'm disowning you, or, whatever it is.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people are kind of searching for that, like, acceptance of, like, is this okay if I'm one way or another? Mm-hmm. When they come into my business, at least, we don't have a sign on our door that says, hey, you have to do this. Hey, you have to do that. Mm-hmm. We're very open. If something makes them feel comfortable, if they want to wear a mask during their treatment, mm-hmm. fine. If they don't want to, fine.
Sure.
We're not asking proof of anything. Yeah. We want everyone to feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. But then we also just ask common sense too, of if you're sick, don't come in, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this pandemic will be teaching us a lot as far as certain practices that I think should have been instilled already. Just as simply as that, right? If you're sick, stay home.
Sure.
Don't go out. You don't need to be around other people, mm-hmm. because who knows what you're going to be spreading to them, right?
Yeah. It will be interesting to see how things change moving forward, because we're all going to be different after this.
Totally. And then, so I more or less just have anxiety if someone is coming in and wanting to challenge me, or if you do decide to share something on social media, since we do have the right? That's our platform, and that is our right. If you're going to end up having all these negative comments and hate, and I really feel like that part is just...
So your anxiety, it sounds like, is more about the social division and hatred and all, which I share that anxiety. I mean, that's not my biggest anxiety. That's certainly one of them, and I'm learning to make that a bigger priority, and that's why we're here talking today, because I think, I mentioned this in a conversation previously with one of my friends. The pandemic isn't going to ruin our country. Mm-mm. But this division will, for sure, and all of the hatred and jumping down each other's throats. So I guess with that, I will admit that my overarching emotion regarding all of this is anger. Honestly, right? I know.
I'm
I know.
shocked.
And I don't like that I feel that way, but it is. And my knee-jerk reaction when I see, like, my very first thought when I see some of the Mean Girl stuff about, you know, if you're not vaccinated, this is your fault, is yes, you know, like, just because this is the background that I'm coming from. And I'm just starting to realize that in myself, that, like, you know, it's harmful to our country for so many of us to have this knee-jerk reaction to jump down other people's throats and blame them and shame them and call them idiots.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we're all going to have to work on. I don't think that it's a productive thing. It's certainly not something that I'm proud of, that anger is my overarching emotion, but I think coming from my background, you know, most of my friends are healthcare workers. So I see all the hospitals on diversion and full of mostly unvaccinated people who have COVID, and then, you know, patients who have cancer or car accidents and stuff like that having to be shipped to other hospitals because our hospitals here are full. And I think that's where most of my anger comes from. Like, I think it also comes from this feel, which, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but in my mind, I feel like if we had a 95% vaccine rate, sure, this virus would still be going around because obviously we have these breakthrough cases that people are getting through the vaccine, but those people aren't filling up the hospital. So I guess that's where my anger is coming from. And I'm sharing the anger with you in the purpose of being vulnerable and telling you where I'm coming from and why I'm trying to dig deeper and get rid of some of this anger and channel it more into understanding. And I think one of the things that I've realized in processing this in my own mind is that anger usually comes from fear. So you mentioned anxiety about the division and things like that. Is there anything else that you have fear about with regards to this pandemic? Not the virus, you've already said, but, like, I mean, there are lots of other people who are worried about loss of freedom, or they're worried about the vaccine for moral or religious reasons. What other fears do you have, like, about the masking or about the vaccine?
Yeah. I think all of that is well said, because yes, all of this stuff does stem exactly from fear. So my fear is more on the lines of this control that is seeming to take over. And you know, we were talking earlier, like, I'm not a mom yet.
Yeah.
Hopefully one day. But it does seem a little fearful that I may lose that choice or that right to say, you know, hey, I have had vaccines, but I would rather my child not, or just to go on a plane and go on vacation. The masking, you know, fine. I can take that off. That's not going to be overly detrimental to my health. You know, I would prefer to breathe fresh air, but I'm totally fine if while I'm on an airplane, because airplanes are gross anyway. It's recycled air. So
not super fresh.
That doesn't bother me. But if my right to function in this world and to make those choices about what I put in my body and what I choose to do for my family, that's where I really start to get a little afraid of how things are going. We've seen a lot with different jobs. People have come in saying, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job, right? Like, if I don't get vaccinated, I think they're going to terminate me, or are they going to accept a religious exemption? What about my kids? Kids going back to college? It's that control and that limitation is definitely scary.
It's interesting that you say, so you say scary and anxious, and I say angry. Do you have any anger? Or is it just like, I can't tell if this is because, I mean, I'm living, as a pediatrician, I'm living and breathing COVID right now.
Sure.
And I think that's probably because I'm not an angry person in general. So the fact that I go to anger, I think probably stems from
just
that.
your name. Yeah, I mean that's just how you deal. I don't know if you're an Enneagram person, but there's definitely we all choose to express ourselves in different ways, right? And your predisposition is anger fuels you, maybe, and gets you.
It's typically not, though. I feel like it's specific to this issue.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do get angry in scenario. I really get most angry when I see the bantering and just the nastiness that is happening on social media.
Yeah.
And that people feel like they're not able to share how they truly feel. And that definitely makes me angry. And then I can get angry, when people are, I was at the farmer's market over, when the world kind of reopened. And a friend of mine had a situation where, we were outdoors. She chose not to wear a mask, and they were kind of termed like the little mask police, right? They would come up to you and try to say, hey, why are you not doing that? You need to put a mask on, all of these things. And in those situations, it does kind of start to get me a little, like my blood starts boiling a little bit, where you're just like, maybe you should worry about yourself and not worry about what other people are doing. And kind of going in that direction.
Okay. I just thought of something. So we talked a little bit before we started recording, which we should have just recorded from the beginning.
I know! There was so much.
we had too much to chat about from the beginning. But we chatted a little bit at the beginning about how, now I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? Okay. We were just talking about, okay. Okay. So we were talking a little bit about at the beginning about the division on top of division, and how, there's all these like subcategories of thinkers. You don't believe in the vaccine for political reasons or for religious reasons or for health reasons. There's just a laundry list. And so I'm wondering if, I just said that Indiana's only like 50% vaccinated, yet you still feel isolated. I'm wondering if that's because there are so many different subgroups. So like the people who believe the same things as you are a small piece of that 50%. And you're not, you're probably not commiserating as much with the people who aren't getting vaccinated for political reasons because you're not resonating as much.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like how our little bubbles have been chiseled down into, like this kind of finite group of...
Which I feel like the people who are vaccinated, there's not that much chiseling of that. So I think we don't have that feeling of isolation that you do, even though statistically it's about even. At least, I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I don't feel very isolated. And again, that's probably because I'm surrounded by my friends who are healthcare workers and like-minded. But I kind of also feel like the people who are vaccinated are like all one crew. So we have, do you know what I mean? So like, we have each other to relate to because we're like, we all got this vaccine. So we don't feel as isolated as you might because you're in like this microcosm of another group.
The non.
Yeah. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if that's a legitimate thing or not, but just maybe
it could definitely be.
Maybe one more like thing that you're going through that's feeding the anxiety of the division.
Sure.
Things like that.
I mean, could definitely be a thing.
Yeah. Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about kind of how we got to the point that we are with our current beliefs. Mine's pretty obvious, but you. I mean,
what do you mean?
I think, yeah, big shocker. Again, pediatrician believes in vaccines, but I think honestly, this belief comes from being in medical school and being in residency, where we learn evidence-based medicine and we learn how to see what is a good study, what is a valid study, what is a well-done study, what are the statistics of this. We take statistics classes, we learn all of this. We are literally taught how to identify good evidence versus poor evidence. So these days, I mean, you can literally Google anything you want and find a study to support it. So
Totally.
In medical school and residency, we learn how to find the ones that are credible. And we have journal clubs where we discuss certain studies and talk about, okay, what are the limitations of this study? So I think being taught how to critically look at evidence just is what puts me in the place of being so confident with the vaccines and trusting those statistics. So yeah, I think going back to like your comment about social media and people name calling, I have a confession that like the name calling that really gets me. Like everything else doesn't really bother me, but when they call us sheep, like that one really gets me, because I'm like, I'm digging through all this stuff. Like, I'm not jumping on board with this just because everyone else is. Like, I'm reading all this data. So, yeah, that's what kind of got me to where I am. But you're going to have a more interesting story, I'm sure, just because it's not as predictable. So tell me.
Oh, my gosh.
How did your thoughts start to evolve? You said you were vaccinated when you were a child. So when did you start to question?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I guess it is kind of a wild story. So, yeah, grew up, I was born in the late 80s. So, my aunt was a nurse, and she was honestly the one that gave me most of my vaccines as a kid, for school, all of those things. Now, granted, I do believe that there were less vaccines needed back in the 80s than there are now. But, kind of just lived the normal Indiana kind of life. Yeah. Went to college, wanted to be a nurse, and
really?
I was in nursing school for 2 years, almost 2.5 years.
Okay.
So I do feel like I have kind of an interesting perspective because I once wanted to be in that. I was very drawn to helping people, and when you're in high school, you take those tests of like your personality, what would you fit well in, and healthcare, nursing, all of that stuff was great. Or it was become an artist, and they're like, well, there's no money doing that, so you might as well just go be a nurse. So, okay, sounds great. I can help people. I'll make money doing it. That sounds great.
Sure.
Work my way up to that, go through nursing school. So sadly, I'm a nursing school dropout, which sounds terrible.
I don't think that's sad. I think you reevaluated your needs and you let go of something that wasn't working for you anymore.
Totally. It was just an interesting path. My entire path to doing something in healthcare like that seemed like such an uphill battle. They make it so hard for you to get into nursing school, right? They really put a lot of obstacles in your way. They're like, well, now you're going to have clinicals on top of your normal coursework. And, and guess what? None of your coursework counts towards your grade until after you take your exams. And good luck if you have test anxiety, right? You might as well just get over it, because you need to pass your NCLEX exam at the end. And it always just kind of felt like I was swimming upstream to reach a goal that I had. And it definitely hurt. It was sad to kind of come to that realization when I did, to be like, I got to give up on this for right now. And I fought the good fight. I ended up switching my major to psychology, went ahead and graduated. But then I was working in the hospitals, and I was still even looking at like, adult programs, accelerated programs of like, okay, how can I get back into this? This really feels like where I need to be. So for like 5 or 6 years, even after college, I was working in the hospital. I was in intensive care and progressive care unit, Back then they did secretaries. I don't think they do secretaries anymore. If you're on the unit.
Yeah.
I was a unit secretary and then I was like a patient support.
I think they do.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
It all turned, electronic when I left.
I think like a unit coordinator is what they call it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So once upon a time was a secretary.
Yeah,
It was great.
Sure.
But that was living, I was right there with the nurses, right? I'm right there with the doctors. I worked night shift, so I didn't see as many doctors. But seeing and experiencing and going through everything that I even had learned in that 2.5 years in nursing school, it was really, it was sadly unfulfilling. It felt like I was doing no good for these people. You saw the same people kind of coming through. It was really sad to have regulars in the ICU or the PCU unit, but it sadly happens. Hearing conversations between, doctors and nurses and, why does this person get this type of care versus this person, just, really opened my eyes. I think my breaking point was really having to treat patients. I don't even know the right word to say it, but like I felt like it was demeaning, some of these treatments that were supposed to be helping them and saving their life. Didn't feel that way.
The medical treatments or the way that they were treated, like way they were spoken to and treated? No,
like more medical treatments, medicines or, seeing side effects and, that kind of stuff. Or just, different treatments, different testings and, things like that. So I ended up leaving, changed, course, and strangely got into aesthetics, which I don't even know why I had terrible skin when I was growing up. And
well, maybe that's why.
I was like, maybe I should fix that. Yeah. But I thought it was going to mesh well with what I had known with medical, right? You always hear about medical aesthetics, all that kind of stuff. But the herbalism is really kind of what turned things around for me and starting to see that there is that other side of healing, and there's a totally other side of what it means to be well and what it means to take care of your body and your mind. And I feel like a lot of the missing pieces that healthcare doesn't address. So that was pretty key. I didn't have any like crazy life event. I've had my own personal like health struggles that going the more natural route has been more beneficial than just, antibiotics or steroids or, something like that if I went to traditional doctors. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where things shifted, and just really being able to see how something that we've already been given, something that's truly available to everyone, no matter if you have insurance or you don't have insurance, it doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter where you're at, there is something there that can help. Yeah. And yeah.
Do you feel like I heard you say a couple things about figuring out, deciding who gets what treatment, and then just now something about who does and who doesn't have insurance. Yeah. So it sounds like those kind of logistical things that go along with traditional healthcare have maybe
that makes me angry.
Yeah.
That makes me very angry. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you feel mistrust towards healthcare workers?
No. Because I think they're all doing what they were taught, what they know, right? We only know any different until we know something different, right? Until it has been brought to our attention, or we're deciding to seek something out where we're like, hey, this isn't working for me. I need to find something else. So I don't shame or feel any ill will towards healthcare workers. If anything, they're the hardest working people because I've been there. Yeah. And I know how much I worked my ass off. So, I can't even imagine what it was like during all of the diversions and things that you were talking about. I'm sure that was exhausting.
Well, it's happening again right now. So I think round 2 is where a lot of the anger comes from. I feel like it was easier in round 1 for people to be like, okay, we're all in this together. But now that it feels like we're doing it again and it was a preventable thing. So I think that's where a lot of the anger from healthcare workers in general comes from.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to say something else. Now it's gone. Something about... I can't remember. Good thing this isn't live. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay, so this is something that so I am in healthcare, but I'm outpatient pediatrics. So
cool.
I'm not in the throes of this like my colleagues who are in the emergency room and the ICUs and inpatient are. So I would say the reason I'm able to be here and have this conversation and deal with my anger about it is because I think those people right now are just so frustrated and angry that they can't come around to these conversations yet. Maybe, maybe eventually, but it's really, really hard on them. So one thing that I hear them saying is they feel like, there's lots of people who there's no trust for healthcare workers anymore as far as giving medical advice, and the same people who are mistrusting their advice to get the vaccine then end up in their care and filling up the hospitals and putting the hospitals on diversion. So do you feel like you would trust the healthcare system to take care of you if you needed it? God forbid. This is obviously not what I'm wishing. But if you're having an issue that goes outside the realm of what the more naturalistic things can take care of, do you feel comfortable going to a healthcare setting to get care, or how does that feel for you?
Yeah. Obviously in an emergency care situation, plans can only help you so much. And then, unfortunately, if my leg gets chopped off or something, I'm going to need a surgeon, or if I'm in a car accident, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't even travel with an herbal first aid thing anyway.
Right.
So yes, there is absolutely a place for healthcare. There is a place for that type of care. We definitely need it. But I feel like, at least, I guess in this instance, I don't know that intervention is necessary.
You mean which intervention?
The vaccine.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I put that?
So people who have answered that question for me before have said that the my way or the highway approach is kind of the turnoff for them. So
in healthcare?
No. People who are not vaccinated feel like we are coming at them with a my way or the highway. Get vaccinated, wear your mask, or this is the only way. Which, everyone knows my views. I've made that very clear that is my view. But I do think that the my way or the highway mentality is alienating people. And I do think that there are people who, like you, are able to trust the healthcare system in certain situations. Yeah. But despite having a hard time with the vaccine, and I think it makes sense that you would be able to pick and choose. When you're angry, it feels like, why are you coming for my help now when you didn't do the thing I told you to do?
Sure.
But when you process it and you start to look at, okay, this my way or the highway approach is not going to work for everybody. And I think there are people who are capable of trusting the health, or not capable, people who feel comfortable trusting the healthcare system, but maybe are not willing to do everything exactly that we recommend.
Yeah. A lot of times it just seems, it's like, oh, well, they're just following a protocol, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys have your protocols. They've been tested. They've been proven. Somebody somewhere wrote this protocol, and that's what you follow.
Yeah.
Right? Well, in my side, we have protocols, but it's more of every single person is different. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to have these set rigid boundaries of, okay, well, if you come in for an infection, I'm going to give you this antibiotic and I'm going to give you this treatment after, and then I'm going to send you out the door and we'll revisit that in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's very much taking in the person as a whole. It's looking at what is their history, right? Like, what has got you to this point? Is this even something that needs to be, addressed with something?
Yeah.
I don't want to say as strong, but something like that type of medicine, or, are you just stressed to the max? It's looking at the person as an entirety, as a whole, and really helping people almost kind of come to their own answers of, if you're feeling unwell, if you're having these things, where is this disconnect? What is it that we can help bridge? Mm-hmm. If we do need to intervene with, helping with symptoms, mm-hmm. and kind of, I guess, easing their journey to getting to the root cause, mm-hmm. of why is this happening in the first place?
Yeah. It's interesting you said the word bridge, because I was literally just thinking that I think there's a place for both. I mean, like I said, I will absolutely never agree with you on vaccines, but I think that,
and that's okay.
If it's, there are, obviously our country is ill for many reasons, with obesity and diabetes and lots of things that would be better addressed with lifestyle medication.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
lifestyle modification.
And a lot of people die. Mm-hmm. There's no vaccine for that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So how do people address that, right?
Yeah.
Heart disease is the number one killer for women. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I can't walk into a doctor's office and say, hey, give me a vaccine so I don't die from heart disease. That's going to take a lot more work, and it's going to take a lot more education. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of where stepping away from isolating systems and isolating us as humans, mm-hmm. into these, okay, you have a sickness. Okay, well, we're just going to look at the respiratory system, or, COVID is attacking this, but you're getting this symptom. Okay, so we're just going to look at that. It's taking out that zoom. Let's kind of go back. Let's retract a little bit and look at, okay, how did this person get here in the first place?
Yeah, and I think I hear what you're saying, and I think that, like I said, I think there's a place for both things. I think from the medical side of things are broken down by system, but also every system is addressed in these really ill patients. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, it kind of goes back to not necessarily, yes, protocols, because that's where the evidence-based medicine comes in, and we base protocols on science and evidence and people who have come before and what the statistics show us. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's definitely a place for what you're talking about too. I don't think, obviously, I don't think that completely replacing our healthcare system with that would be helpful. And I don't think that you think that either. Yeah. But I think that, like I said, I think that there is a place for that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be awesome to see more integrative physicians coming out, and DOs, and physicians that can start to incorporate more of, let's look at lifestyle and let's look at diet. And, if we could ditch the food pyramid, that just needs to be trashed.
Agreed. 100%. It's my plate now. The pyramid's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So
similar idea.
Yeah. I think if I was to zoom out, so, right now we're all hyper zoomed in on COVID and we're looking at all this. And if I was to zoom out, I would see it as, like you said earlier, we are sick as a nation. We are mm-hmm. sick as people. And until we can fix that, mm-hmm. these types of viruses and things will always start to come up because people aren't healthy. And, when your body is unable to handle that, obviously there's tons of scenarios in the world, right, of people who unfortunately just have really terrible immune systems or maybe have gone through treatments and are on immunosuppressant medications or things of that sort that they have to live. But if we were just kind of talking in a perfect world, if we could zoom out and maybe get rid of some of the fast food and some of the convenience factors of how we live as a nation, I don't know that we would be having such stances on, okay, a vaccine's going to fix you or it's not.
Interesting. I agree with you that absolutely we need to look at lifestyles more. And I think our healthcare system and the way that insurance dictates it is just broken right now. And it leaves doctors with very little time and resources to address some of this. So that makes it even more important for some of this bridging to be happening, referring people to other types of people who can help them with the lifestyle things.
Absolutely.
I'm never going to say that that's going to change our need for vaccines.
That's okay. That's totally okay.
But I do worry that all of our current division and hatred of each other and name calling is burning all these bridges and leaving us in a point where we can't work together at all. Not that it was a great working relationship to begin with, because I think both sides are kind of have their heels dug in, but this has made it, in my opinion, dramatically worse, the division.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When instead of just being curious, like we had talked about before, and it goes from, hey, I'm just being really curious about how you decide to live your life and maybe how you decide to live your life and how do you raise your kids, and looking at things from just a curiosity standpoint to, no, I'm looking at this because I want to prove you wrong.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's a no-go for me, right? Have the curiosity, learn, try to broaden your perspective. Yeah. But being so narrow-minded like that to just be like, no, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah. And I think that's surprise, this entire podcast is a therapy session for myself.
I love it.
Same. But in realizing, I'm very angry about this, and I'm like jumping on board with these hateful things because I'm not posting hateful things, but my initial reaction is like, yeah, they're all idiots. Like, get the vaccine, you idiots. And so, and I think just trying to work on that and address it is through seeing it through someone else's eyes, seeing what their fears are, what is fueling their perspective makes a big difference in how much anger you feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you've gone your whole life trusting in that system and trusting in that type of science, right? Where you're like, okay, this has been a proven theory. This has been a proven thing. Science shows us this, to something that isn't always backed by science, right? That can look real scary to a lot of people where we're looking at it as, oh my gosh, this is something that is here, that has been given to you by nature, whether you choose to grow it or it's been grown for you or, however it is. But I'll have people that walk into our apothecary being like, I don't know that I want to take plants. Like, that scares them. And in our minds, we're thinking, well, what the heck? Like, why would a plant, why would you be afraid of taking a plant? We're so used to taking a pill, right? But if you dig deep enough, everything started from an apothecary standpoint, right? Eli Lilly started as...
Well, that's where a lot of our medications...
Right. Yeah. But we've just gotten so disconnected. We've gotten so far onto the convenience factor of, well, instead of having to do this oh, you got to boil water first. I got to steep it for 5 to 10 minutes. Or how many drops do I have to take? What is this to, hey, if you can just take this pill once a day, you're going to be scot-free. You're going to be fine.
That's interesting.
That's probably a hard shift, right? That's like a hard thing to look at of like, what?
Well, it's just interesting to hear your perspective of it, like to think of the pills as convenient. Like in my mind, it's not that it's convenient, it's that this is what has been studied, this is what the evidence shows. And I think that's just where our brains work differently. And again, that's why it's important to have these conversations to start to understand where each other's brains are coming from. Yeah.
No, it's definitely been great to be a part of this type of conversation because it is definitely hard for, I'm sure, a health practitioner, pediatrician to sit across from a business owner, esthetician who is an herbalist. Like, what? That is the most messed up scenario.
But it's not. That's the whole entire point, though, is that it hasn't been hard.
Good.
Because this is why. Because we're not debating. We are having a conversation and recognizing each other's humanity and learning how to respect each other's fears. And I think that is...
Which are all valid.
Yes.
These are all valid.
Yes.
No one should tell anyone otherwise.
Right. And I think that's where... just having these conversations just brings up things that you don't otherwise think of. So, we talked a lot about the name calling, but I just think in both sides of this pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine debate, I don't want to speak for you, but I think most people have a stereotype in their head of what the people on the other side look like. And you know what I mean? Like, so like the stereotype of like, from a healthcare worker's perspective, the stereotype of somebody who's not vaccinated is, you've heard all this stuff. You're idiots, you're ignorant, you're just stubborn. But I think learning, like hearing people's actual stories helps take away some of the caricature and help you see the people for what they are. Not that we will ever agree on this, but that we can at least see where people are coming from. Another thing that came up a lot, I have been having some Facebook conversations on this of a similar caliber, just trying to respect each other and figure out where people are coming from with this, is, I told you this earlier, but people have been messaging me in regards to wearing masks and saying, listen, I didn't want to say this publicly, but I was sexually assaulted, and when I put on a mask, it makes me relive that experience, which is just totally blew my mind because it was more than 4 people who sent me that message saying that.
Wow.
And this is something that's not out there because it's so hard for people to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's something to think about when you're calling people an idiot for not wearing a mask, I think. Not that that's a huge chunk of our population that's having that problem, but who knows what else is out there. Like, would I like everyone to wear a mask right now while the Delta variant is insane? Absolutely. But I'm starting to be able to at least remove some of the anger with understanding of people's fears and where they're coming from.
Yeah, and to kind of, I guess, bounce off of that, same on this side of when I walk into a business or a place, and if they're saying, hey, you need to put on a mask to shop here, I have the choice to be like, okay, well, no, I'm either not going to go in. I don't have to be that person, right? It's taking that breath of like, do I need to charge in there without a mask when they are obviously requesting that I put one on if that makes them feel safe?
Right.
So I think the same thing needs to happen on our side is you don't have to try to go in and make a public statement every single time, you go in. Like, if you need to go into that business or into someone's home and they are requesting that, why not? Why does it every time have to be this standoff of,
yes,
well, actually, I want to come in and totally disrespect that and not wear my mask. And
yes.
I think there needs to be boundaries there as well, because
and I think this is a great segue into kind of the final thing that I want to talk about, which is, where is the middle ground? I mean, where can we meet where I can learn how to respect your fears and make you feel safe from your fear of having, being told what you do and don't have to do to your children in the future and put into your own body? And what can you do to respect my fears of the hospitals being overrun and our schools being shut down because COVID is running rampant through our schools, and I have 4 young children. I cannot do homeschooling again. I just cannot.
I couldn't even
There are
imagine.
many things I can do, and that is not one of them.
Right. Oh goodness.
Yeah.
Initially when you were just saying that, my first thought was to listen. I think we both need to, like, each side needs to stop and to listen, but we need to listen to, as well as we can, those firsthand sources and those more trusted sources. I think the media, I think just relying on social media, those kind of sources are getting, we're getting to where it's, being just fed exactly what you want to hear, what I want to hear.
Absolutely.
No one's seeing the true sides.
The algorithms channel people who agree with us into our brains.
Right. Yes. Which is great when I'm having a bad day and I just want to have my people.
I just want to have my rage at the idiot anti-vaxxer meme. No, I'm just kidding.
But it's finding those safe people, those safe sources that you can just listen and we can learn, and try to do what we're doing and just communicate. Yeah.
And I think you already kind of offered your middle, which I think is masking in certain situations or choosing not to go into a place that's requesting masks if you don't need to, because you know that it will make other people feel unsafe. So another thing that came up in a discussion was, even if you don't think a mask is going to help, because I get this a lot, well, the masks don't do anything. Well, yes, the masks are not perfect, but in my opinion, they do something. And isn't it enough that I will feel safer having my children in school if your children are also wearing a mask? Is that enough? And I don't, there are lots of unique situations with this where I think, like you said, I think listening is really important. And the lack of listening is what has fueled these hateful, horrific school board meetings where people are screaming at each other and plastering posters with their enemies' faces and home addresses on them. Right. It's just gotten so out of hand. But yeah, I mean, again, I think recognizing that if I don't have a personal, actual fear of the mask itself, can I wear it even though I don't think it will work to make you feel safe? And that's an interesting question that I think we need to talk about. And I think there needs to be an endpoint too. Lots of people who give pushback on the mask say, "Oh, are we just going to mask indefinitely?" And I think the middle ground for that is probably establishing some sort of endpoint when the cases get below a certain number, or when the kids are able to be vaccinated and build antibodies, something like that. So I don't know. That's what feels like the middle for me, because again, obviously I'm never going to convince you to get vaccinated. You're never going to convince me to not vaccinate, and that's okay.
Totally.
I think, just...
We're all humans. We all have our unique situations, just like those poor women who are being triggered, by putting a mask over their face. Well, they're not going to walk around sharing that with every person that they're,
absolutely.
Hey, I'm not going to put this on because of this, or, what have you. But yeah, I think it is going to change a lot of the way that we do things from here on out, which maybe some are for the better. I hope some of them are for the better. And the kids in schools, I have no idea. I'm not dealing with that yet. I hear a lot from teachers and a lot of stress that it does bring. Yeah. So to me, I'm like, if it brings that much stress, really, what good is this doing? Just because I feel like there is so much that we need kids, especially young kids, to see from our faces and to recognize and developments there. But I think it's going to definitely be a long, ongoing kind of thing. I kind of hope somebody somewhere is thinking about doing a study of like maybe some of these kids and how this might affect them long term.
For the masks, you mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think people are working on it.
To kind of see.
I guess from my perspective, always the greater harm is going to be them not being able to be in school in person. I mean, for me, I know there are children who are very different from my children, but from my personal experience and many of my friends and patients' personal experiences, the kids don't seem to mind the masks that much. And I think with an end point, it's still going to be better than them being out of school. Because them being out of school is just horrible for everyone.
It's chaos, right?
Included, yes.
No, yes, our kids need education, and if it turns out being a hybrid schedule, hey, until things can be worked out on both sides where both sides are happy, like you're saying, if cases go down and things like that, it seemed like a lot of kids had trouble with the online learning. I'm a terrible online learner. But if that's a middle for a while. What do you do? I don't know.
I feel like homeschooling is not a middle. I feel like I would 1,000,000,000% rather have masking than have them at home. I just think, also as a pediatrician, I mean, a year ago, anxiety and depression in kids was through the roof, and it still is to a certain extent, but I can't tell you how much better everyone's mental health is now that they are physically back in school.
That's great.
It makes a huge difference. Great. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I will do anything to keep the schools
I'm not a mom.
Session.
I don't have kids. Yes. I'm definitely on that very far end of like, don't know what it's like to have all these kids at home.
No, but I think we have common ground because it sounds like you are willing to be respectful of the masking thing. Obviously not like masking all day, every day, everywhere. But I think that there is some common ground there because you have respect for people who don't feel safe when there aren't masks right now.
Right. Yeah. And it's all about treating people with kindness and being humans, that old saying of like, do unto you as you would to other, or, I don't know how we all got here. It just seems like it was like, whoa. Hate and anger through the roof. And like you said, maybe some of it is politically driven and, lots of other facets. But, stripping all of that away, we're all people. We're all doing the best that we can do.
I think the big thing fueling all the divisions, we just all have such different backgrounds. And until we can sit down and hear about each other's backgrounds and where we're coming from, we're just going to keep getting more and more divided.
Yeah.
So, I'm just really thrilled that you were willing to take the time to talk to me without even knowing me or knowing what this conversation was going to be like. So I really appreciate you being so brave and so vulnerable and offering to let us record this at your husband's recording studio, which just so happened to be another thing that made this possible.
Absolutely.
So again, I think, we both have recognized that our biggest threat right now is the division in our country, and sitting down and actually listening to each other instead of following these caricatures and sides and name calling is what is going to help start healing us.
Absolutely. And that's all we need. We need to just start healing. We need to stop with this further ripping apart. And we need to deal with the emotions that are being triggered, the fears, whatever it is. People need to start being able to share that safely And hopefully that'll be the next step.
Yeah, it's going to be lots of small steps, but
yes.
Here's like mini
Babies.
step 1, this
Baby
conversation.
step 1.
Check. Yeah.
We did it.
Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Yeah.